This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, all of you all. Today, we are almost at the end of the mycology topics. So, we are speaking about opportunistic mycosis. So, these opportunistic mycosis, importance of these opportunistic mycosis came into the picture only with the advent of new diseases like HIV, where immunodeficiency is very common. So initially, how they identified HIV was also because of a disease called as lung disease, lung pneumonia, sudden upsurge of the lung pneumonia that was caused by Pneumocystis carinii. Initially, it was thought to be a parasite. Now it is no doubt confirmed that it is a fungus. So with the increase of such pneumonia cases, they were trying to identify what is the cause of that. So when they went into the picture, ultimately they could identify that it was a virus which ultimately led to the immunodeficiency, and that led to the surge of a very common fungus, usually which is not pathogenic. So in general terms, if I need to tell about opportunistic mycosis, so opportunistic fungi are those which enter our, in fact, they may be present in our body at the various spots as normal commensals also like candida, but they cause disease only if there is an immunodeficiency, where is defect in the immune system. Otherwise, they are usually harmless. So with this background, not only HIV, now other immunodeficiency states have also come into the picture, like your organ transplantation or other diseases where nowadays immunodeficiency is very common. So with this background, now we are discussing only about those fungi which cause diseases in these immunodeficient individuals. So you can see this picture. This picture, this table is not complete, but still it will give a gross idea about that. So there are pathogenic fungi and there are opportunistic pathogens. So true pathogenic fungi are those, though our immune system is good also, they can cause the disease, whereas opportunistic pathogens cause the disease only if our immune system is weak. So these are true pathogens. Pathogenic fungi are true pathogens which may cause cutaneous infective agents, which you already studied. That is dermatophytes, epidermophyton, microsporum, and trichophyton. Just give me a second. So subcutaneous infective agents are those which you have studied this also, Cladosporium, Mathurella mycosis, okay, Sporotrix, Shrinkite. Whereas systemic fungal agents are those like Blastomyces, Coccidioides immitis, Histoplasma capsulatum. So opportunistic fungi are those like, especially if you take Candida. So you all know Candida is a commensal in the oral cavity and also in the vagina of the females. So Candida, Cryptococcus. Cryptococcus is one fungus which is transmitted from the feces of the pigeons. Usually in the healthy individuals, it causes self-limited disease which usually goes unnoticed. Whereas in immunodeficiency states like HIV and others, it causes a very severe disease. More than pneumonia, the disease caused by it, that is meningitis, is very severe. Okay. Apart from that, you have Rhizomucor, Aspergillus species. All these, as we go on, we'll just discuss in the initial stages. As an introductory part, I've just put up pathogenic fungi and opportunistic pathogens. So introduction, what are these pathogenic fungi? As already explained, these fungi which are part of the normal commensals like Candida, or which may be a saprophyte in the environment, which are present in the environment or in the nature, that is Aspergillus fumigatus. So these are also causative agents of the infection. You can see this is the oral cavity and the white spots which are the candid spots. Okay, these are white oral patches, patches in the oral cavity which are constitutive of the disease. So these mycosis occur in the immunocompromised individuals, individuals with defective immune system. Defective immune system, I mean, you have studied at the end of your immunology topics the immunodeficiency disorders. So in all those immunodeficiency, primary immunodeficiency, secondary immunodeficiencies, so all those individuals are prone to these mycotic infections. and some metabolic disorders also, where rarely these may cause the infection where our immune system is weak. So comparison of true and opportunistic pathogenic fungi. Okay, true and opportunistic fungal infections, degree of virulence. The capacity for virulence is the, in a simple term, if I need to explain you, is degree of virulence is the ability to cause the disease. How strong is your enemy? See, when we try to fight in a battlefield, we should see who is strong. We are strong or our opposite party is strong. So virulence. If the virus, true pathogen are usually highly virulent, they are very strong enough, whereas opportunistic infections have a degree of limited virulence. They are weak. So they attack only the weak individuals. Condition of the host resistance is high or low, whereas opportunistic infection resistance is low. Primary portal of entry, that is respiratory, whereas opportunistic infections, respiratory and mucocutaneous infections. Nature of infection, usually primary infection in case of pathogenic, pulmonary, it may be pulmonary or systemic, usually a symptomatic disease. Whereas opportunistic varies from superficial skin lesions to pulmonary and systemic, usually symptomatic individuals. Nature of immunity is usually well developed and specific, whereas here weak and short-lived. That is immunity. Infecting form primarily conicidal or mycelial in case of opportunistic infections. Okay, habitat of the fungus, usually soil, whereas here it varies from soil to flora of humans and animals. So they may be saprophyte or they may be commensal organisms also. So they are distributed. Geographic location of the pathogenic fungi are usually limited to the endemic areas, whereas opportunistic fungus is usually worldwide. So these are some of the examples, differences between the pathogenic and opportunistic fungi. Last, especially the upper four one are usually the major one which can decide, which are the deciding factors. So opportunistic mycosis may be endogenous or exogenous infections. Endogenous infections like Candida and Pneumocystis carinii are the two major infections. I have just given few examples. Exogenous infections like Cryptococcus, Aspergillus zygomyces, and miscellaneous opportunistic fungi. Aspergillus zygomyces, these are all saprophytic organisms which are present in the nature, especially common in case of agricultural workers, where they work in the fields and they come in contact with those rice grains and all. So common opportunistic fungi are Candida, Aspergillus, Cryptococcus, and Zygomycota species. Candida species usually have increased in the present day, especially Candida and Cryptococcus. Cryptococcus, as I already told, more common in HIV affected individuals, which is an end-stage disease where usually Cryptococcus normally causes pulmonary infections. In these individuals, it causes cryptococcal meningitis, where diagnosis is also quite difficult. Already the patient's immune system is weak, your cell-mediated immunity is weak, CD4 cell count is less. Under such conditions, Cryptococcus meningitis can prove very dangerous, which may lead to disseminated infection, and that itself might lead to death of the patient instead of your HIV. So as per Candida, it's a normal commensal which are present in the body. So our individual of a individual which are present in our body itself can be dangerous when our body immune system is weak. That usually occurs when our normal other commensal bacteria die off. That may be due to antibiotic therapy, very frequent antibiotic therapy with very high doses of antibiotics, or chronic severe patients like catheters or diabetes, continuous corticosteroids or immunosuppression, especially which is required. Immunosuppression and corticosteroids are especially required in organ transplant patients, which may be for a longer terms. Apart from that, you may expect these diseases, especially in the cancer patients, where immunosuppression is very common. So all these are the predisposing factors which might lead to the infection. Aspergillus infections, which may occur in case of leukemia patients, corticosteroids, tuberculosis, immunosuppression, IV drug abuse. So these are few examples of the opportunistic fungi. So coming to today, we will be discussing about those 4 or 5 species which are opportunistic fungi, which are quite important. So of this, Candida stands first. So candidal infection, most common you can see is a budding yeast cell, though it's not true yeast. The Cryptococcus is a true yeast. You can see the picture. This can be diagnosed by simple gram stain also. These candida, you can see the upper picture. This is a sputum sample. See, you can see this is a sputum sample. These larger cells are the epithelial cells with the central nucleus. These are large cells are the epithelial cells with the central nucleus. You can see this pink color structures. Those are gram-negative bacilli. Apart from that, you can also see a tree-like structure. These are hyphae. These are called as pseudo hyphae, and these are buds. So buds are the one from the smaller ones. Younger generations are arriving. So all these picture will give a candida species. So caused by candida yeast-like fungus that produces pseudo hyphae. It may affect any part of the body, though I have written some of these one: skin, mucosa, and various internal organs. It even causes disseminated fungal infection. So candida species looks very simple, but it can cause various diseases, including disseminated infection, leading to severe mortality. So you can see this is the skin being affected by the candida. So candida species, initially they were thought that only Candida albicans is the only species. I mean, not only this, it's the only one common species which is causing diseases. But now it's proved beyond doubt with the advent of HIV and other immunodeficiency conditions. Now, non-albican species like Candida tropicalis, Candida glabrata, cruzi, paraspolis, and dubilinensis, all these species have become very common. In fact, Candida albicans has been put to the side. These non-tropical albican species have increased in its importance. You can see this baby how badly affected with the fungal infections. So these picture gives some the pus is there, secondary bacterial infection is there. Most of the time they think that it's a bacterial infection. They go on dumping the antibiotics if the clinician is not sharp enough to identify the disease. In such cases, the patient may not recover completely from the disease because you are not targeting the agent. In fact, the patient's immune system still goes down because the antibiotics are still clearing the normal flora. So diagnosis is very important, and treat with antifungal agents, then you will have a good result. So clinical features of Candida: infectious diseases are one, allergic diseases is the other part. I'll speak about infectious diseases in the next slide. Now we'll speak about allergic diseases. So allergic diseases caused by Candida are candids, urticaria, eczema, bronchial asthma, gastritis, and irritable bowel syndrome. So all these are two very common ones which we have, which have put up. Coming to the infectious diseases. Infectious diseases caused by Candida can be mucocutaneous lesions, it may be cutaneous lesions, or systemic disease. Most common is the mucocutaneous lesions. Only if your immune system very bad, that your CD4 count is very less, in such cases only, or your both humoral and cell-mediated immunity are completely failed. In that cases only, end-stage disease will be your systemic infection. So mucocutaneous lesions may be oral lesions or angular cheilitis. It may be elementary, that is esophagitis, vulvovaginitis, or it can cause ocular infection also. You can see this picture. These are angular cheilitis. I am just moving the cursor. I hope you can see this picture. These are angular cheilitis. Or you can see the oral cavity, okay, near the pharynx, oral cavity near the vulva. You can see all the white patches. These white patches are all due to the Candida infection. Cutaneous infection, or it may, you can see the tongue, pale tongue with white patches. That also can cause the infections. So cutaneous lesions, it may be paranoia, that is nail infection, onychomycosis, diaper dermatitis, especially common in the small children where they use common diapers which is not cleaned properly. Granuloma formation is also common. In case of systemic infections, urinary tract infection is very common, followed by rarely endocarditis, pericarditis, pulmonary lesions, meningitis, disseminated infection, and osteomyelitis and nosocomial infections also very common, especially in the individuals who have been hospitalized. So of all the systemic infection, urinary tract infection is very common, and if the patient is in a end-stage disease, they may land up into meningitis and disseminated infection. You can see the wide range of infections caused by the candida. You can see this picture also, the nail infection, onychomycosis is there, and the fingers, cutaneous and subcutaneous lesions also are there. You can see this is the tongue, below the tongue, white patches. So oral cavity is also affected. So these are the some of wide range of lesions caused by the candida. So if you ask before, these antifungal agents, all these antifungal agents are usually have their own side effects. So without proper diagnosis, you can't just start the treatment. So proper diagnosis, especially microbiological diagnosis, is very important for the fungal infections to be treated. So laboratory diagnosis can be by direct microscopy. You can isolate the organism, that is culture. You can also have some skin tests which are non-specific, which are not that useful. Immunodiagnosis, that is both antigen and antibody tests, of which only few of them are developed, few are not developed. So you are left with two options. One is direct microscopy, that might be helpful to you, and second one is your isolation, which is a confirmatory diagnosis. You can see this is a fluorescent picture of the candida. If you see under the fluorescent microscopy, and this you can see the germ tubes. As we go on, I'll explain you what are germ tubes, which are specific to the candida species. This is a bud. From that you can see a small tube. These are called as germ tube test. Here also you can see this is a small bud. From that tubes are arising. That is called as germ tube test. And this is a picture. Sapporodes dextrose agar, SDA, is a common media used for the growth of fungus, that is Sapporodes dextrose agar. You can see white colonies, non-mucoid dry colonies, that is candida. So specimen collection, depending upon the site of infection, you can see if you are expecting a pulmonary lesions patient is having cough and all, then go for sputum, or if you are having a skin lesions, go for skin biopsy. So depending upon if you have a urinary tract infection, you can go for a urine sample, or you can go for a bronchial wash, or if you feel that disseminated infection is there, then go for a blood sample. So anything can be the specimen of your choice depending upon the site of infection and your clinical presentation. That will change. So direct microscopy, sputum sample as shown in the previous picture, you can see proper gram-positive oval budding these cells with pseudohyphae. Again, I do repeat, gram-positive oval budding cells can be found in as a normal flora in the humans, normal individuals also. But what is differentiating is your pseudohyphae. If a microbiologist reports that pseudohyphae is present, you can see this picture. Here you can see only budding cells, no pseudohyphae. If pseudohyphae is present, it clearly indicates it's a pathogenic and that might be the cause of disease. So culture, usually on the Sapporodes dextrose agar, colonies appear. It's easy to grow. Candida 1 to 2 days only. You can see this white color dry colonies, creamy white, smooth and pasty colonies are there. This test for species identification is one is germ tube test. Next is Dalmo plate culture. Chrome agar can also be used. These are chrome agar give different colors. You can see this last picture. Chrome agar gives different colors depending upon the species identification. Sugar fermentation and assimilation tests and molecular methods are all available, but usually that much is not required. Sugar fermentation and assimilation tests are required, especially if you want to differentiate between Candida albicans and non-albicans species. So in such cases, all these species tests might be required. Okay. So few Dalmo technique, that is germ tube test, and Dalmo technique, that is chrome agar. The two tests are very important, which I will be discussing now. So germ tube test is a specific test for the Candida albicans. If germ tube test is positive, it clearly indicates that is Candida albicans species. No means you can go for non-albicans species. Again, I repeat, in India, still albicans species is very common, whereas in the foreign countries, developed countries, non-albicans species have emerged as a major pathogens. I mean, especially major opportunistic pathogens in immunodeficiency individuals when compared to the others. So in this, what we do, germ tube test, a small portion of the isolate colony. So you have isolated the fungus in the Sapporodes dextrose agar. You take a small amount of the colony suspended in a test tube containing 0.5 ml of rabbit or human plasma or serum. So you take human plasma or serum or rapid plasma or serum 0.5 ml. In that you suspend a small amount of the isolate, that is candida. So incubate that for 2 hours. Drop of yeast serum suspension is placed on a slide, overlay it with the cover slip, and examine microscopically for the presence of germ tubes. So you see these are germ tubes. So after 2 hours, instead of this bud will contain a tube. So that clearly indicates that this is Candida albicans. It's not valid if it is examined after 2 hours. So the time maintenance is very important. The amount, how much you take the plasma, how much colony you take, everything requires expertise. So you should be very careful when you are diagnosing a disease. Apart from this, you can also go for Dalmo technique. I will explain here. Dalmo plate culture method can also be used. You can use where you take cornmeal agar. Cornmeal agar is a nutritionally deficient media. Cornmeal agar we usually use for the growth of the fungus, where we try to lessen the nutrition. The purpose is if we decrease the nutrition, most of the fungus are spore forming. So under deficient nutritional conditions, spores are formed. So once these spores are formed, that can be observed under the microscope. That is called as Dalmo technique. So immunodiagnosis can be antigen detection or antibody detection. So as you already know, antibody detection is not very specific. Already the patient immune system is also weak. So you can use ELISA or latex agglutination test. Whereas antigen detection also ELISA or latex agglutination test. Enzyme detection by enolase, aspartase and proteinase. In the recent years, these enzyme detection has gained importance, but again, these are not available everywhere and they are quite costly. Tests for metabolites like mannitol, arabinitol, alpha-1,3 glucocan, all these can be utilized. So all these may be utilized for the diagnosis of infection. So Cryptococcus neoformans is the next one, common one which I want to explain here. This Cryptococcus neoformans is a haploid yeast which is encapsulated. See, this is a capsulated organism which is distributed worldwide in association with the pigeons droppings. One thing which is specific is pigeons don't suffer from these diseases. Though pigeons droppings usually contain Cryptococcus as their normal commensal, pigeons never suffer the Cryptococcus disease. Most common cause of fungal meningoencephalitis in immunosuppressed hosts. Why pigeons don't suffer is because the temperature of pigeons is very high, usually 44 or 45. At that temperature, Cryptococcus will not cause the disease. So Greek word crypto meaning hidden, coccus as berry, neos new. Latin word forma used for form. So this is the word how Cryptococcus neoformans has been arrived. It's a capsulated fungus, more common in the immunosuppressed individuals. Clinical manifestations are influenced more strongly by host immune status, usually occurs between ages of 30 to 60 years. Port of entry is the respiratory tract, has a strong predilection for the CNS. Usually in the immunocompetent individuals also it may cause a disease, but usually self-limiting lung infection that goes unnoticed. Whereas in immunosuppressed individuals, it causes a very severe meningitis, which increases the mortality of the patient. So this is of Cryptococcus has been divided into two parts. One is in the immunocompetent host, second one in the immunocompromised host. So you can see it can also cause the skin lesions and lesions on the tongue. So Cryptococcus may be pulmonary lesions, CNS lesions, cutaneous lesions or disseminated infections. So pulmonary is the most common one, whereas immunocompromised individuals, CNS lesions and disseminated infections are very common. So Cryptococcus neoformans has a particular tropism for the CNS, mainly causes many cases initially manifest clinically as meningitis. So what are the virulence factors which will lead to the disease? One is capsule. It has a capsule which can be pathogenic, melanin pigment, production of proteinases, nanoproteins, and release of polyol metabolites. So laboratory diagnosis of Cryptococcus meningitis, direct detection methods, isolation and immunodiagnosis. Direct detection methods may be negative staining or gram staining. In fact, more than gram staining, we rely on the negative staining. As we go on, I'll explain you how we can do the negative staining. In fact, the picture behind you is a gram staining picture showing the gram positive organisms, other budding yeast cells. Other stains like chalcophore staining, that is fluorescent staining techniques, musicaramine staining, Masson Fontana stain, Alcyon blue. All these stains can be used. So direct detection methods depending upon the site of affection. So if your lungs are affected, go for sputum sample or bronchial wash or bronchial lavage, bronchial brushings, whatever can be used. If it is a meningitis, then CSF sample can be used. If it is a disseminated infection, blood sample can be used. So you have to observe it very carefully because detection in the CSF is quite difficult, especially in the CSF and blood. Negative staining is most useful, especially you can see what is negative staining. Background is all dark. Around the dark background, you can see the organisms. So that is negative staining. We can use two more commonly used stains, that is India ink and nigrosin stain, wet mount, where you put a drop of nigrosin or India ink onto the cover slide and you just put a drop of sample to that and you put a cover slip and see under the microscope. Under the microscope, if you see this budding yeast cells with surrounding halo or thickening, that is called as capsulated organisms. So capsulated organisms can be seen by negative staining. This clearly indicates the capsules are there and that usually the capsulated organism fungus that is in the immunocompromised host is your Cryptococcus. Okay, though it is a distant halo. So this is the budding bud. You can see my cursor. This is a bud. Surrounding is a distinct halo. This is the proper picture of a negative staining. Gram staining, gram positive round budding yeast cells can be seen. Chalcophore white staining useful when number of yeast cells in the specimen is candy. Isolation that can be done on Sabro's dextrose agar. Mucoid creamy white yeast-like cells. Mucoid creamy white yeast-like cells can be seen. Conformation of Cryptococcus species, neither seed agar or bird seed agar can be used. This is specific for that. Used to demonstrate melanin. So this is bird seed agar. This is used to demonstrate melanin production. Brown colored colonies. So brown colored colonies indicates that it is its Cryptococcus species. Growth at 37 degrees. Urease test is positive. Assimilation of inositol and nitrate. Most pathogenicity tests can also be used, but now it's not common because of animal acts. It is used only in the research laboratories when required. So your SDA is a quiet one, but one thing in the Sabro's dextrose agar which you need to differentiate is Candida and Cryptococcus. Both are yeast, whereas Candida is not a true yeast, Cryptococcus is a true yeast. Apart from that, Candida species usually cause creamy colonies, but they are dry, whereas mucoid nature is seen in case of Cryptococcus, especially because of the capsule. You can see the stickiness when you observe the colonies. All this will be shown to you in the practical classes. Because of the pandemic, we are not in direct contact. Usually we complete the theory classes. After the theory classes, within 15 days, you'll be seeing the practical session also. Anyhow, whenever we meet again, hope this pandemic ends soon, and so we can interact directly where we can see this. You will be able to see in the lab all this directly on the Sabro's dextrose agar, and we'll try to explain you how the difference is. Okay. Immunodiagnosis, antigen detection test. Antigen detection test, especially for the CSF sample, is very important, which detects, which can pick up even small amount of the organism. Most commonly used to establish diagnosis of cryptococcal meningitis. Why I'm telling that diagnosis is very important is you have good antifungal agents for the treatment of the cryptococcal infections. But to start with those antifungal agents, confirmatory diagnosis is required because they have patient immune system is already weak, and these drugs already have their own side effects. At that stage, if you have a good only confirmatory diagnosis, you can go with the treatment. So these cryptococcal meningitis by latex agglutination assays, which are reliable, easy to perform, and sufficiently sensitive and specific. So this you can see these are latex segmentation. As this picture shows, it is very simple, but the whole of this latex segmentation assay requires minimum 3 to 4 hours, which have multiple steps. Then only we can come to the diagnosis. No antigen detection tests usually are rapid, but there are some antigen detection tests, especially like cryptococcal neoformans, which you need to have multiple steps. Then only you can come to the diagnosis. Apart from that, it is not available everywhere and it's a costly affair. But still, in the favor of the patient, because diagnosis is important to start an antifungal agent, you can go with the antigen detection assays. So antibody detection assays are the other assays which are agglutination assays, indirect fluorescent antibody tests, and complement fixation tests, not very reliable due to cross reactions with other diseases. Treatment antifungal agents, that is amphotericin B, that is gold standard. Apart from that, flucytosine can also be given. But it requires a long-term treatment. If meningitis has occurred, intravenous treatment is also required. Apart from that, we need to balance the toxicity of the drug also. So next agent is Pneumocystis jirovecii. So this initially was thought to be a parasite, but now it's proved beyond doubt by the molecular studies that it is fungus, and this fungus certain absence was there, especially in the developed countries like US and UK, where they detected the process. HIV was the main pathogen viral, which decreases the immune system, affects the immune system, and that itself secondarily lead to the upsurge of these opportunistic fungi, usually not very pathogenic. So the organism is of low virulence only, not very pathogenic. It's of low virulence found in the lungs of man and animals, but in opportunistic conditions that itself is proving very pathogenic. So clinical features: pulmonary pneumocystosis and extrapulmonary pneumocystosis. Pulmonary pneumocystosis present as pneumocystis pneumonia. Again, I would like to tell these are common in developed countries, whereas in India, where still in the developing stage we are, where tuberculosis is still predominating over the other fungal infections also. So progressively insidious with gradual increase in productive cough over weeks or months, followed by dyspnea, fever, tachypnea, tachycardia, and hemoptysis. So you can see these are all general features for any lung infection. So that might be confusing. So high degree of suspicion is required, then only you can go for a fungal diagnosis. Pneumocystis carinii associated with high morbidity and mortality in patients with CD4 counts of less than 200. Also been reported in individuals with intact immune system. Extrapulmonary pneumocystosis, though you can see in the intact immune system, usually that is self-limiting. Usually the patient's lungs won't be affected to the great extent. Extrapulmonary pneumocystosis reported in 0.5 to 2% of the persons with AIDS. AIDS is an end-stage disease. See, HIV is a virus. After this, we'll go for the viruses. You can see two terms. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, is the name of the organism, whereas AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency disease, is a end-stage disease caused by HIV infection. So please don't confuse. So all those which are having HIV antibodies or HIV infection are called as HIV infected, whereas AIDS is given, the term is given only to those few individuals who are in the end stage disease, where their immune system is too bad, CD4 count is very less, and your viral count, HIV viral count is very high. So clinical manifestations depending upon the anatomical side involved, maybe lymph nodes, bone marrow infection may be there, spleen may be infected, liver. You can see almost all organs can be infected, including CNS. Again, laboratory diagnosis, you can see the backside picture. This also is the yeast. These cells, how it looks under the electron microscopic picture. Direct examination, fungal culture, immunodiagnosis, and animal pathogenicity. So though there are wide range of laboratory diagnosis, but only few, especially the first two, are very important. Direct examination, staining methods. Here you require some special staining techniques. Your gram staining may not be that useful. So GMS, glomerulus methylene blue staining, method of choice to demonstrate the cis resemble black colored crushed ping pong balls against the green background. Okay, cysts resemble black colored crushed ping pong balls against the green background. Apart from those, you can also use Toledan blue bow, gram, Weigert stain, Weigert Jimsa stain, calcophore stain. Calcophore is a fluorescent staining technique. You can see this picture, Gomeroi methamine silver staining technique, where you can see black color. These are all cysts, black colored crushed ping pong balls against the green background. Culture not very useful for routine diagnosis as the organism not successfully. So here staining becomes again more important when compared to the culture. Apart from that, immunodiagnostic techniques, serum antibodies can be measured by complement fixation test, immunofluorescence assay, enzyme immunoassay. But again, I would like to tell you here, if the patient body immune system is weak, your antibody count will be less and you may miss the diagnosis. So these may not be very useful. Negative doesn't mean that they are true negatives. Non-specific tests like immunological staining with monoclonal antibodies against specific but pneumocystis cerevisiae may also allow for more accurate diagnosis. Molecular diagnosis like DNA probes promising as a diagnostic tool. These offer increased sensitivity but are cumbersome, may give positive results in asymptomatic individuals also. So they have their own. Again, I would like to tell molecular diagnosis is not that developed for the fungal infections and bacterial infections when compared to the viral infections, where viral infections most of the time we rely on the molecular diagnosis as we are doing now for the COVID. Apart from this, so we have discussed about Candida, we discussed about Cryptococcus. Now we are coming to the common molds like Aspergillum and Penicillium, which we commonly see. You can see constitute common mold seen on the damp bread or almost any organic matter. You can see the greenish or blackish. So you have some 5 species of Aspergillus. This also you can see in our laboratory. We will show you all the 5 species which we are there. Aspergillus niger, fumigatus and all. Habitat usually soil and dust. Sporous, ubiquitous, they are present everywhere, more commonly seen, but all of us don't usually suffer from the disease because they are all saprophytes present in the environment everywhere. So they cause disease only in the immunocompromised individuals. 300 odd species of Aspergillus are identified, among them 5 more common. So Aspergillus, they may cause bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, aspergilloma, that is ball in the lungs, that is called as aspergilloma. Invasive pulmonary aspergillosis, very rare, usually seen in immunocompromised individuals. Disseminated infection, otomycosis, ear infection is also common. Mycotic keratitis, eye infection. This is especially seen in the fields when they come in contact with those during grazing. When suddenly they are grazing, those small particles enter to the eye. Apart from that, sinus infections can also be seen. Nasal sinus infections. So all these wide range of infections can be seen, but they are not very common. They are present always in the environment. They are around us, in and out. Okay, but still very rarely they cause the disease. You can see this picture, upper picture, aspergilloma, chronic cavitating aspergillosis, chronic necrotizing aspergillosis. All these, you can see from here, these are simple infections. As we go on, they are severe and systemic. So last one is disseminated aspergillosis. So aspergilloma is initial stages. As we go on, they go to the necrotizing lesions. Finally, disseminated or systemic infections, which can be very serious. So again, diagnosis is very important. Is it really causing the disease or not, because they are present in the environment? So it's a challenge to the laboratory person also, because when he is diagnosing, he or she is diagnosing, they should be very careful, because that these are present everywhere. So are they really diagnosing the pathogen or the opportunistic fungus from the sample, or it's just a contamination? Laboratory contamination is also very important, because based on your report, the treatment will be there. So microscopy, you can see gram staining or other staining techniques are not useful. Here we can do main staining techniques which are useful are direct mounts. One is KOH mount. KOH mount is the direct mount, and LPCP mount, lactophenol cotton blue mount. You can see these blue colors. If it is blue color, it is lactophenol cotton blue, whereas if it is colorless, that is KOH mode. So you can any sample can be used depending upon the site of infection. So if you have a lung lesion, sputum, bronchial wash, whatever it is. If you have a urine suspicion, you can go for urine lesion. Keratitis, so eye infection. Usually we get these lesions also. They give a small scrapings, conjunctival scrapings will be there that you put under a we put in the slide, put a drop of KOH or LPCP, put a cover slip and see, or skin lesions, anything can be there. And you can also put a LPCP mount also, and small amount of the lesion you can try to culture the organism. You can see this beautiful picture, though in KOH direct mount you may not see this beautiful picture. This can be seen only under the culture. So you can see these are phyllites, conidiae, these are all spores. Depending upon the arrangement, how they are arranged, how the vesicle is. You can see this vesicle, you have one, this vesicle is globular shape or it can be circular shape. And the arrangement of these phyllites and conidia, based on that, you can see here, this is only 3/4 arrangement. You can see this picture, complete arrangement. So this is sunflower arrangement. So depending upon that, we divide into species. So these are the culture SDA plates. These are black colored growth. Black colored growth usually goes in favor of Aspergillus niger. If it is green color, see you can see this green pigmentation. Here also you can see this green pigmentation. It may be fumigators or flavors. So depending upon that also you can divide. And final confirmation is by the microscopy. So from these lesions, these are all powdery growth. From these lesions you take a drop under the LPCP mount, put a cover slip and observe under the microscope, you can see these beautiful structures. Penicillium species. Penicillium is another species apart from Aspergillus, which is also a very common one. Penicillium present in the environment grows on various substrates like bread, jam, fruit and cheese. It is an emerging clinical entity. Okay, you can see that picture, how the under the microscope, depending upon these picture only we try to diagnose the disease. So causes two types of disease. One is focal disease. It is seen at 22 degrees. So this property is also useful for the diagnosis. So this is a dimorphic fungi which can be seen at as a 2-1. So Penicillium species, dimorphic fungi causes. Apart from this, you can see microscopy by KOH mount, LPCB mount, or pencil where you can see brush-like one. This is brush. So I've been putting the pictures. This is under LPCB. Brush is seen, that is called as Penicillium. By branching of conidiophore into primary medullae and secondary phyllites, from tips of which chains of conidia are produced. Conidia spherical, regular in size. Culture colonies, the granular SDA, your simple saffron dextrose agar can be used. If you feel that there might be contamination, then you can use antibiotics also. Colonies granular and entire, generally with various shades of green, although yellow and brown colored colonies can also be seen. One species recently involved in systemic infections, that is Marnepi, produces wine red pigment diffusing into the agar. So depending upon the pigment produced also you can decide the organisms. Last part, zygomycosis. Though this is not the end of your opportunistic mycosis, I've just tried to explain some important one which is important at your UG level. Though for your MBBS second year, fungal infections are they don't expect that complete detail, but little bit of basics is required at your level. This can be your dermatophytes can be long questions, systemic mycosis can be long questions, Candida and Cryptococcus can also be your long questions. So zygomycosis is commonly referred to as mucormycosis, invasive diseases caused by zygomycetes, which may be collective term given for the species like Rhizopus, mucor, Absidia, widely distributed in the environment, inhabitants of soil, dung, vegetables, vegetative matter. I am trying to explain you all these are saprophytic organisms. Transmission of infection, inhalation of airborne spores, ingestion of contaminated foodstuffs, direct inoculation of traumatic breaks in the skin and mucous membrane, especially it is airborne infection by contaminated foodstuffs. So zygomycosis may cause pulmonary lesions, it may cause cutaneous lesions, it may cause disseminated infections, or it has rhinocerebral lesions. Of all these, I would like to tell rhinocerebral diseases are very common, followed by pulmonary infections, especially in case of immunocompromised individuals. So again, laboratory diagnosis is by direct microscopy, that is KOH mount and LPCP mount. You can see the proper spores. So these are the spores. Depending upon their arrangement, you can decide. So you have this as sporangium, sporium, columella, sporangiophore. The one stick-like is sporangiophore, and you have also these rhizoids. If you have these roots, in a simple term, if I need to tell, if these roots are present, these are called as rhizoids. If these are not present, that is called as mucor. If this stolon is present, then it is absidium. So depending upon the arrangement under the microscope, you can have. So I repeat, if these stick-like structures, root-like structures are present, that are called as rhizoids, then it is rhizopus. If these are absent, only the upper part is present, this one, then it is mucor. If a branch-like connecting structure is present between the two one, that is stolon, then it is called as absidium. So this is the proper picture of the zygomycosis. So culture on the based on the Sabrow's dextrose agar, you can see directly how it has grown onto the food material. This is one, see the food material, how it is infected. So these are the some of the fungal infections which I have discussed. So next part is your mycotic poisoning, that will be discussed in your next class. So I don't want to go into detail about this. So these are some of the opportunistic fungus which can cause very severe infections, especially in the immunocompromised individuals. Okay, thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.